I'm Hunter, the community manager over here at Arbitrum, or Off-Chain Labs building Arbitrum. We're speaking with the Chainstack team, building infrastructure for Web3. How's it going, guys? How are we doing?
Awesome. Busy as always. How about you?
I'm doing wonderfully over here. For those who don't know, speaking with today Eugene, founder and CTO over at Chainstack, as well as Usman, who's developer relations and head of, I think it's the AVAX ecosystem. So it should be a pretty interesting conversation for today. um, but I think just getting right into it. Maybe like we can just kind of talk about real quick, like what is Chainstack, and Eugene, maybe if you want, you can even get into what kind of got you to founding Chainstack in the first place.
Right. So Chainstack is a leading suite of services connecting developers with Web3 infrastructure. Um, we are powering applications in DeFi, NFT, gaming, analytics, a bunch of other verticals. The idea to start Chainstack came quite a long time ago. It was in 2018 when I was actually building a solution on Ethereum, and it was complete horror story because it was very hard to build anything in 2018 on blockchain. There was no tooling, there was no infrastructure. We had to run nodes ourselves in our own data center, but the problem is that like the nodes broke all the time. So in fact, we had to run two different clients because when one client broke, the other one was operational. So we basically switched between like Geth and Parity. Um, all the time. So it was complete disaster to build things on the blockchain, but it was very, very promising and it was very, very cool. And the like applications emerged at that time, and it was clear that there is very bright future for this technology. So we decided to go all in and to build basically the platform that will connect builders with Web3 infrastructure and make it easy for them to develop their applications, test them, ship into production, and scale.
No, yeah, and it's obviously goes without saying it's a very very important thing, especially back then. I'm sure. I mean, like I was a lot less into the crypto Twitter and like like back end of stuff back in crypto when I was around in 2017, 2018. But I'm sure I'm sure like the landscape of Web3 infrastructure back then was so much different than it is now.
Completely, it was there was nobody there. Basically, I remember like dev cons in 2017, 2018. The community was so small. And now if you go to like we recently had a big crowd on DevCon in Colombia, and the community is now so big. I mean, it emerged really significantly, and the number of real world applications that you can actually go and use right away changed dramatically. So I think yeah, it's incomparable versus what we had a few years ago.
I think the great thing, alongside obviously that scaling, a lot of the, I guess you could say, a lot of the, the actual front end apps also scaled alongside of it, which is to me, it's like great. I think like one question people may have is like, what's the point of having so many different, like infrastructure providers? Why can't we just use one or two of them or something similar to that? Like, what would you say to that? And I guess just generally, how does Chainstack kind of stack up against other Web3 providers? Sorry, I had to say that. Stack up.
Sure, absolutely. Just wanted to add one point, which I think is funny, is because we talk about this dramatic change for the last few years, but I think that the reality is that for the mainstream, for retail, crypto is still a scam if you think about it. So they still don't really understand it, and you still need to explain it from scratch. So it's funny because for us, people from the industry, it's such a big change, but for general public, it's still like nonsense, right? So it's very very cool. It's very inspiring because we still have like long way to go. So I think it's kind of a small fun point. Talking about Chainstack and our positioning on the market. Um, if you think about traditional cloud infrastructure market, It's quite saturated, and there are hundreds of different providers of things. If you think about like internet providers, same thing, right? So we have this big network called internet, and there are different service providers giving different set of tools, different pricing. They're located in different countries, in different cities. So the same idea here as we see it. Basically, blockchain as a decentralized network. It's as soon as it's gaining more and more adoption, it needs more endpoints and entry points for people to start interacting with it, either reading data or writing data, building applications, running applications, scaling applications. So we believe in the not only in multi-chain future, but also in like multi-provider future, when there will be a multitude of options for getting access to Web3 infrastructure with different services, with different pricing, with different positioning. For instance, any production grade application that is currently built in Web2 is usually using multiple clouds. There's the whole concept called multi-cloud. Basically, when people build applications and they have various hosting providers for redundancy, so that when AWS USC goes down, they have other provider, let's say like Google Cloud or Azure in the same region that they can fall back on. So we see it in the same way. So basically, I think that there will be a lot of different providers that will provide different kind of services that will have differentiators versus each other, and people will have preferences because they like branding of one provider or more, or they like documentation of another provider more, etc., etc. So for the multitude of developers in the space, I think there should be a multitude of services providing access to the infrastructure.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off Eugene, I think we're very early in this point in time in the industry, right? I think it always comes back to that, where top projects in the space are like if you're really a top project in the space, you're transacting maybe a billion requests a day, and that's huge, right? That's huge volume, or a billion plus requests a day is huge, right? And as you're starting to see that right now, with even just that transaction volume, lots of projects are needing to be using multiple providers, kind of having to load balance off of those providers and be able to sustain that kind of transaction volume. When we start seeing Web2 type of throughput, like even just one TradeFi company or one TradeFi bank would transact in 1 trillion in volume within a week or a month, right? And so once we start seeing that kind of throughput, it's gonna become very clear that large companies or large Web2 corporations that need to see scale in terms of their transaction volume cannot live on one provider. So I think it's gonna be very clear going on in the future, just like what Eugene was saying, that there's gonna be multiple cloud providers that are gonna be very prominent, that people are gonna be using multiple of those services to be able to sustain those loads of those high transactions that will be coming in very soon.
Interesting. It's a very like I feel like it's a very I forgot what the word I'm looking for is, but like to take that like kind of more so than like saying okay we want to be the biggest and the best. It's more so saying like we're all here building like relatively the same kind of Web3 infrastructure that people are going to need, and frankly, you know as you mentioned, essentially projects need to load balance if they want to do everything correctly in a more decentralized manner, so they're not relying maybe on one infrastructure project maybe alone. Um,
Yeah, I think realistically, and according to the ethos of the ecosystem itself, I think it's also very healthy for the ecosystem not to rely on one single provider. And we've been there even in Web3 already. Like we've seen a lot of ugly moments when the whole internet of Web3 is relying on like fewer endpoints, for instance. And everybody understands now, I think, after all these years, when like Infura was, for instance, the primary MetaMask provider, even MetaMask understand that, even Infura understands that that it's not scalable to like large number of users, and it's just not up to the reliability that we're all used to at the moment with all the Web 2 services when we expect them to be up 100% of time. So I like to say that we love competition. Honestly speaking, I love all our competitors because they make the industry better. They make us better as well because we see what they're shipping. We learn from each other all the time. So we provide better services. So because we compete, we strive for better reliability, for more services, for more convenience, more API. So in general, it's better for everybody. And because the industry and the market will be so huge, then there will be a very large market for every single player on this market.
So the current mindset essentially is to pretty much be this, another great option for people to plug into to get their data from the blockchain, and not necessarily be like the one that kills everything else.
Absolutely, yeah. So we
Right.
clearly want to differentiate, and we have certain like things that we like to highlight when we help builders develop their own applications. So, for instance, one of the differentiators that we have that we are focused on advanced users. So, majority of our users are like high-skilled engineers who build dApps and run them in production, and they need super scalable, reliable application with very little limits so that they can basically put a lot of load on their endpoints that we provide them with burst, with spikes and all this kind of stuff. And infrastructure should be able to handle that. So we focus on more advanced parts. So we don't do a lot of like early stage developer business because, for instance, we don't have as many tools as, let's say, Alchemy has for the beginners, but for large scale users, we have many more features, for instance, and this is our market basically. That's what we target on. So according to this, we provide also a lot of advanced features. Like we provide, like obviously, like full archive nodes for all the chains that we support. We provide like HTTP, WebSockets, APIs, GraphQL APIs, different authentication options. So for those who like prefer basic authentication, we provide it. For those who prefer like token-based authentication, we provide it. Like we provide like a beacon chain APIs for Ethereum, for instance, and many other like advanced things that other providers might not necessarily be interested in providing because they basically do more in terms of like feature set rather than like depth within each protocol and the features within each protocol. Another key differentiator for us that we are very distributed as also as a company, but also as core infrastructure. So we have 6 hosting providers on board now and 10 regions available today. So basically, you can like use if you're in Singapore, for instance, you can use a Chainstack node for, let's say, Ethereum or Arbitrum in Singapore. And you can basically choose the locations in the way you want. And we've done some like casual tests like a month ago or something. And like hitting a Chainstack node from Singapore is like 16x faster than like hitting in Fura or Alchemy, for instance, because they're mostly focused on US as an example, right? We provide other advanced options, for instance, which is completely unique on the market. We do provide dedicated nodes with unlimited requests, a lot of customization options for like different flags, for like configuration of the node software, and it proved to be very cost efficient. For instance, for high load applications because they are not limited by throttling, or they're not limited by the model, the pricing model for the API, and they can basically send as many requests they want to the dedicated nodes. And a part of it, obviously, as we experienced a lot of complications when we started building things ourselves a long time ago, we're completely obsessed about like reliability, speed. We provide amazing 24/7 custom support. We also, one of the like small features, but very nice for crypto, is actually we accept payments in crypto natively. So if you want to like pay for infrastructure services in Dogecoin or USDT or Bitcoin or any other popular cryptocurrency. You can do that out of the box. So it's like a quite unique feature, which is kind of funny because most of the other vendors, they just support like credit card, which is a little bit funny.
And the way that I look at it is that we really do see a multi-provider future where we see multi-node providers being able to power some of the largest projects in the space, where large projects who see high throughput will need multiple providers to be able to sustain that throughput. But underneath all that, we really want to have the best technology and the best, like just Eugene how he outlined, the best features and functionality to really make it as easy as possible for people to build using Web3 technologies. So what that means is our focus currently right now is purely just on building out as many tools as we can to make it as sustainable as possible for you to build, right? And that's what we're doing to set ourselves apart from a lot of these other providers, where now if you're a large organization who needs, XYZ amount of throughput, where a shared or elastic node isn't doing the job for you, well, now you can be offered a dedicated node or a dedicated gateway specifically just for your platform, offered straight from Chainstack, right? Or, if we have all these other unique services like, Polygon Supernets or Avalon Subnets, we can build that out of the box from you in a bespoke way. So I think, and that's what a lot of these other infrastructure providers aren't providing at the moment, where they're focusing on, other forms of tooling and making it more easy for baseline devs to build, which is very important, and we need that in the industry. We're taking a much more enterprise level approach, where we're really building out these tools so that when the time comes for billions and trillions of transaction volumes to be done daily, we're going to be there to be able to handle that and be primary providers for a lot of these major corporations that are coming over.
I couldn't agree more. And it's such an interesting take. I think, especially like you use the word multi-provider. Yeah, like multi-provider future. I think just to maybe piggyback off that a little bit. Like, do you guys think that there'd be any benefit to coordinating with other providers on like sustaining this all these different dApps kind of coming live, or does that even make sense?
Yeah, and I'll definitely let Eugene expand on this a bit more after I introduce it. But we partner with a bunch of different providers throughout the industry. Like one of our best partnerships or relationships we had was with the Morales team, and I think you got to see it was, Morales and Chainstack worked pretty close together, but then Morales decided to go a different direction with their business model and kind of step away from the nodes and infrastructure side of things and focus more on APIs and education and all these other routes, which is great. And for them, right, because that they decided that's what was best for them as a business model. And so for them to retire speedy nodes, which happened, I think, just a couple months ago, having that partnership and relationship with Chainstack was great for them in the sense where they could now just tell all their speedy nodes customers, hey, Chainstack is where you should go and build now, right? And obviously that was really mutually beneficial for us, but at the end of the day, that's what having these relationships are for. um, so that when certain providers end up switching business models, or when certain providers cannot handle certain levels of throughput, other providers who are focused specifically on the infrastructure side of things can take that load off their backs, right? And kind of just help them sustain, or whether it was in the case of Morales, where we were helping them out prior to them fully abandoning the node infrastructure side of things, or it's really a full-on speedy node situation where they abandon it fully, and then we take all of that business. So I think it's that there's a lot of different ways that providers can work together, and I think um, that you're going to start seeing that a lot more throughout the industry as we see scale. Like I said, like when we start seeing billions and trillions of transactions coming in daily. From worldwide throughput, you're gonna start to seeing a lot of providers having to work together, out of necessity, not just out of these partnership ways. So I think it's starting early and getting in those ground levels right now is very important.
Yeah, to add on that, a couple of points. So first of all, um, there are more and more like infrastructure providers appearing in the space every week, literally. I think since we have been here for a long time, it's pretty interesting to observe because, in fact, this business is really hard. and it's not that sexy. So it seems like, yeah, I ran a node and then I just like expose it to internet securely, and then I start charging for it. But there are so many nitty gritty details, and in fact, these details are not so sexy. So you have to have certain like stamina to work it out to like build a scalable business model on top of it. So I'd say that it sounds easy, like a let's run a node and let's sell it, but in fact, it's pretty complicated business. If you actually want to run it as a business, if you want to make a like a profitable business out of it, etc. Second point, which is quite unique for Web3, which never happened in Web2, is this like constant desire of technologists to make things decentralized, to make them more robust, to make them more independent, to make them more permissionless. So I think that we have quite significant movement here with projects like Pocket Network, for instance, Infura announcing decentralized network. There's been another project coming up recently called Lava Network. So there are a bunch of projects that actually try to build a decentralized layer on top of decentralized layer, which is blockchain itself. And it's quite interesting to observe. And we are very deeply engaged in all these initiatives because we are like genuinely interested in how this is going to unfold and whether there's actually going to be one like large meta provider which will basically aggregate all the like providers in the space, or they will still be like niche providers that, or like or rather like different providers like with Web2 cloud, for instance, each providing like different type of services. So I think this decentralized piece and like decentralized infrastructure piece, I think it's pretty interesting, quite unique. We have never seen this before. So there's no like meta cloud provider, for instance, which like would aggregate like GCP and Azure and AWS, and will provide like this cloud services in like completely agnostic fashion, right? So I think this is very cool and very interesting development in Web3 space, and we are fully on board on it, and we participate in many of these networks. For instance, like we've been very early support of Pocket. We are running a bunch of nodes for Pocket. We're helping a bunch of Pocket node providers with like with relay nodes, which is basically like blockchain nodes. So yeah, I think there's a lot of there's a lot of room here for a lot of other projects. It's very interesting with these decentralized aspects, and infrastructure is very hard. So so these are like interesting aspects of this space, I would say.
Awesome. Yeah. Switching topics a little bit here. I'd love to know a little bit more about what Chainstack stance is on layer twos, and I guess more specifically, kind of your thought process behind expanding support for Arbitrum One.
Usman, you want to start?
Yeah, 100%. So our stance is very clear, right? We view the blockchain ecosystem as this growing space of operating systems almost that are going to be used in multiple different ways. So, like you said at the start of this, I kind of view over the Avalanche ecosystem, which is an alt layer one, right? But our focus really is expanding the main principles that Ethereum started with and really pioneered in this industry, which was the programmability on top of blockchains. And our main focus is to expand that in whatever way we can, right? And onboarding developers and giving them the best developer experience in whatever way we can. And what we've seen in recent months, and especially in the past few months, is that layer twos are really starting to be the main topic of conversation when it comes to Ethereum scalability, right? There's going to be no more like proof of stake came and went, but transactions per second and all these other um, key metrics about Ethereum stayed the same, right? And now we're looking for new solutions to kind of be built out for us to expand for the next billion users. Like we all get to say this buzz line in the industry, um, and with new things like Arbitrum, Nova that just came out, and You guys had your Arbitrum Nitro upgrade in August, right? Like these things are very key pieces of infrastructure that are going to be needed going forward for not only just the Arbitrum ecosystem, but the overall Ethereum and Web3 ecosystem of builders. Because the way I view Arbitrum is just an extension of Ethereum. Um, and I know that's kind of like the mission that you guys have established there as well. And so that is just what we're doing. Anything that we can do to move those goals further is in our roadmap, and that's why Arbitrum was so huge for us to get onboarded and for us to kind of focus on getting as many builders into your ecosystem as possible.
Cool. So yeah, I would like to add maybe a little bit more pragmatic view on that. So like I myself, for instance, as a startup person, as someone who built something from scratch, I strongly believe in product market fit and in adoption of technologies, right? So for me personally, for instance, it's very interesting. The technologies start to become interesting when they hit some sort of like inflection point, when there is like group of early adopters, and then there are more users of it, and that's what excites me, for instance, and that's what we build Chainstack in mind as well. Like what's the most usable blockchain, right? So what's the most easy to use bridge? What's the most like cheap transactions, etc. So we are looking at it from a perspective of adoption and usage. Like what would be the easiest technology for people to use? Not necessarily the coolest technology, if you say so, but rather like what is actually usable. What brings us as an industry to the next like growth phase, right? So and layer twos, I think they have a very good chances to do that because of this like inherent connection with Ethereum, and Ethereum being like a number one chain, basically storing a lot of assets already, and there's a significant usage even in like retail space, right? So I think L1s have very important role in this, basically being a layer when everything settles. And L2s have a very important like transactional play here, when basically it's convenient to use, it's fast, it's cheap, it's democratized. So what I personally love most about this Web3 space is that it's democratizing a lot of things. So say with NFTs, we democratize ownership. With like DAO, we democratize governance, and so on and so forth. So many things are democratized. So and like transactions cross border should be also democratized. So I think L2s have very good stance here, because from one side they're interconnected with one of the most popular chains that has the most adoption already, and they introduce this ease of use that will allow more people to join this and to build things, to use things on top of this chains. So I think L2s have very good chance on bringing Web3 to mainstream because of all these properties.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, I agree. um, I mean, but even also, I mean, I think everyone here, at Off-Chain Labs building Arbitrum would agree that it truly is a multi-chain future. I mean, like at least from the stance of, for example, like not only do we have Arbitrum One live, and currently home to like some of the biggest DeFi apps in crypto, frankly, which is insane. But also we have Arbitrum Nova that we recently launched, which is more dedicated to like social applications, like the Reddits of the world, and more gaming focused stuff as well. But definitely like a big believer in not one size fits all, and obviously having more infrastructure support. These new chain deployments that we do, it's very important as well. And yeah, I mean, I think frankly, it's like it's kind of the thing like people don't really think about. Like, I mean, even when like I mean, as a user, you're kind of just looking for your favorite projects, like like whether it be like deploying on your favorite chain or just going to the project first and then finding out about how the chain works. People don't realize though it's like your favorite projects have a lot of dependencies. I mean, a lot of those dependencies do rely on infrastructure, and that's where Chainstack comes into play. I think one thing though I'd love to ask as well is, I mean, if you can, yeah, I'm not sure this is maybe too much alpha. I don't know what alpha means in like the infrastructure world. Are there any projects that you guys work closely with on Arbitrum One, whether it be from an infrastructure standpoint or even from just like a app standpoint?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of interesting players who are building on Arbitrum, starting from the usual suspects that you would think about, like Chainlink, for instance. They're quite heavy user of Arbitrum because they're like the prime provider of oracles, as well as like other multi or cross chain players also that use us for other chains, like other 20 chains that we support, like such as Layer Zero, for instance, or like Wire, or other players in the space who are already multi-chain and not like um, Arbitrum specific, right? I'm sure we have a bunch of Arbitrum specific projects too, but largely we have, since we support so many protocols within the same console, within the same dashboard. I think it's mostly beneficial, and again, it's part of our value proposition to have projects who have many chains on board, and then they have just one like point of entry to all these chains, basically for one page where they can see and observe all the endpoints and the statistics based on these endpoints.
And I will say, just this might be some minor alpha. There are a lot of major Web3 native projects that we're building on, Polygon or just ETH mainnet that I've been talking to recently that are really, really looking at Arbitrum as their next new home to deploy on. So I think in the next couple months, we're going to start to see some really nice and really big name projects start to move their stuff over. Conversation is really there right now.
I think just to move on to a little bit more of some of the just less tangible things, because these kind of conversations are always the best. I love your thoughts on maybe how infrastructure generally plays into UI, and maybe what you think this needs to look like to reach mass adoption. And we can get as nitty gritty as you want, or we can go in any direction you guys feel makes sense.
Yeah, this is definitely something we're very, very passionate here about at Chainstack, and I definitely know Eugene is going to have some thoughts on this. But just to kick things off, um, one of our biggest things right now is that user and developer experiences are both so clunky throughout the space, right? Whether you're a developer who's building, being able to have all these different tools that are fragmented in their own ecosystems that you have to go to, they're all themselves is so difficult. So we really take the approach of making it as easy and seamless as possible. So when we're talking developer experience, we literally, if you go to our console, you're going to be able to see, um it's like we want to have the graph able for you to able to index and query your data right from one console, right? We're at the same place where you can be able to upload things to IPFS right from the same place where you can view all your node data, right? Like, just make it as easy and seamless as possible, so all of these things are within developers reach. And like you said, really creating that UI and user experience for those developers that make it as seamless as possible so they don't have to go to all these different places. And then that will in turn eventually create a better user experience so that now these devs, who don't have to jump through 10 different hoops to be able to build an application, can actually focus on building applications that have real use cases and are easy to use and user friendly. So I think this theme that we have in the industry right now is so important, and within the past couple months everyone has been focusing on UI UX. And I'd like to think that we here kind of pioneered that in the past like 6 7 months, where we were just purely just focusing on making it as easy as possible for developers, whether you're Web3 native or not, to be able to kind of build in this ecosystem. But I'm sure, Eugene, you have a lot of thoughts on that, I'm sure.
Yeah, to complete this thought, I would like to drop a little alpha and like about our UI and our platform UI, right? So we recently met with our competitors at the conference, and they said, guys, you have like hands down best UI in like infrastructure player space. So so you need to try it out. But I want to tackle a little bit different subject, which is like, okay, how does infrastructure affect like DApp UI, for instance, like or game UI? So, and I think that's a very important topic, and there is no amazing solution today for various reasons. First of all, for instance, it's very inconvenient to use Node APIs for your front ends for like data gathering or like data analytics, for instance. It's pretty okay to like send transactions from users or something like that, because that's why you have these Node APIs in the first place. But let's say reading data and like large amounts of data and like showing it in the UI is not a straightforward task for a node, because the API for the node was developed for primarily for operators and like low-level developers, kind of back-end developers or block-end developers, as some people say, rather than like UI, like front-end applications, right? That's why we have this like complete massive projects like Morales, for instance, who are mostly focused on this, and like they provide like amazing experience for people building like web apps and like dApps, so that they're smooth, so that they are fast, so that they load quickly, so that they have all necessary like components, and also like lower level APIs that allow you to build UI in an amazing fashion. There are also other challenges. For instance, like the latest discourse on crypto Twitter is around like multi-chain UI, right? It's currently it's completely horrible, because when your dApp is talking to, let's say, 10 different networks, basically what you need to do, you need to like establish like 10 different connections with 10 different nodes, and some like SDKs they support, like 6 networks out of 10, and then you need to like install like 4 more SDKs or something like that. So it's a complete mess because the frameworks, the SDKs were not fast enough, and like the chains were launching faster than the SDKs were prepared for that. So, for instance, there's no like good multi-chain like JavaScript SDK that will give you an amazing ability to like interact with all the like 10 networks from like establishing like from one connection, etc. Which boils down to the like multi-chain APIs too. Most of the APIs that we have now, most of the infrastructure is chain specific, right? So you can like fetch Ethereum data from Ethereum endpoint, or like Arbitrum data from Arbitrum endpoint, but you cannot really like fetch XYZ blockchain, like regardless what it is, like based on like address or maybe like a block cache or something like that. So we are very passionate about like multi-chain, again, because we already support 20 networks, and we want to add more benefits for the builders in the space. So one of the things that we are looking into is this multi-chain everything. So multi-chain APIs that are not just like 20 different APIs, but basically one API endpoint that will be smart enough to understand like what chain are you querying, like what do you want to do, what do you want to fetch, where do you want to send information, as well as like multi-chain frameworks, SDKs for builders who are having like multi-chain applications in the first place, so that they don't need to build like separate thing for each of the chains. So I think these are some of the interesting challenges related to UI on the builder front, on the like that front.
It's a very interesting topic, and honestly, a great point there. I think, and I'd love to be corrected, by the way, if I'm wrong. My understanding currently is that like what some of them do is, for example, if you have this, let's say it's a metaverse that has NFTs from multiple different chains. Some, I guess, some will use cross-chain messaging to pull data from like a different chain, and I guess that's more so like not so much on the infrastructure provider, but more so on the blockchain level for that. My question is like, with that multi-chain endpoint you may be speaking of, would that make cross-chain messaging more or less obsolete, or am I just talking about two different things here?
It's a great question, I think, and it depends on like how deep we want to go in this like multi-chain API in general, because it's primarily just about like sort of, it's like API aggregator. So you have like DEX aggregator that basically gives you access to like all the DEXs from one UI. So what I was talking about is mostly like some sort of like API aggregator. Basically, you call it and it gives you information, everything that you want, basically in like one response. So this is kind of simple idea of like API aggregation. But as you correctly mentioned, there are many other like multi-chain, cross-chain aspects which could be integrated, such as messaging, bridging, and we're actively looking at that too to understand whether there's because ultimately it's all infrastructure. So we call it we stopped even calling Chainstack like infrastructure provider. So what we like to call Chainstack now, and that's what our like positioning board operates now. For instance, is that we call ourselves like connectors with Web3 infrastructure. So we want to enable this easy link for people to basically reach the Web3 infrastructure. And like bridges are Web3 infrastructure, and cross-chain messaging, like layer zeros and all that amazing projects are also cross-chain infrastructure. So we are looking at ourselves as these enablers of like this easy link for all kind of pieces of Web3 infrastructure, not necessarily just blockchains, but also other high-level infrastructure such as, again, oracles, like indexers, bridges, cross-chain messaging services, and so on and so forth. So that's the stance.
Totally, yeah. I think, and I think that kind of just came from my very limited knowledge of how our stack works. To be clear, again, I'm the community manager, so I don't need to know that much about the stack, but I try my best. Um, I think that in that case, probably a perfect kind of segue into maybe your roadmap. What have you guys maybe recently released, and what do you guys have coming in the near future?
Right. We have very exciting quarter, which is Q4 this year. We have two major releases upcoming soon, so I'm dropping some alpha here again. So first thing that we are going to release is our hosted subgraph service. So basically, you will be able to use your favorite subgraphs that you have been using, like on hosted service from the graph on decentralized network on Chainstack. For various networks, you could run like dedicated indexers for high-load applications. You can do all sorts of multi-chain indexing, or you can just simply like just deploy one or two subgraphs and just like have traditional like pay-as-you-go pricing. So this has been a very, very highly demanded feature on our platform because it's very complementary to what we do in general. Another thing that we are building and shipping this quarter is storage APIs. We start with obviously the usual suspect, which is IPFS. So we want to provide people who are building in the like NFT space or like social or gaming, basically anybody who need to store data and they prefer to do it in a more decentralized fashion than just like going uploading images on like S3 bucket. We want to provide access to storage APIs starting with IPFS, but we have very exciting roadmap for next year for all other, again, Web3 storage projects that we want to provide access to for our customers. Another thing that is also very important that we're currently building is self-service integrations with different complementary providers that might provide like data APIs or other tooling, which is very, very complementary to what we're already building with our APIs. So we are building a self-service integration marketplace where people would be able to come and on top of Chainstack services that we build ourselves in-house, they will be able to use like other auxiliary services for all sorts of like advanced APIs, data APIs, and a bunch of other tools and services that developers usually need. And we have like first batch of partners that we're gonna announce soon for the marketplace integrations. So yeah, these are some of the upcoming features, and of course we have a super exciting packed roadmap for the next year. But I think it's a little early to talk about it. But you got the idea, right? So we want to connect people with Web3 infrastructure. So whatever developers need, whatever they want to leverage in terms of Web3 infrastructure, we want to provide super easy access in terms of like how quickly they can use this tool, how easy is it to pay for this tool, how easy it is to set up, etc., etc. So we want to simplify this and make it literally like few click path with no hassle for people to use all this like Web3 tooling, which are usually based on some decentralized technologies, and we want to provide easy access to them.
Great to hear. Yeah, I mean, clearly no shortage of of news coming from you guys. Yeah, within the next couple months in that matter. I think in this case, then we can probably go to some community questions if people have any. For those of you who, yeah, want to ask Chainstack a question, feel free to raise your hand. And let's keep it Chainstack related, please. Nothing. As much as I love Arbitrum, let's keep it Chainstack related. Give me
One
related to
token, one token.
Eugene. They're supposed to ask that, not you. Okay. Yes, don't ask that, please. So if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. While we're waiting for that, by the way, I thought I had to mention actually while we were throwing our hackathon in Bogota after DevCon, I think there were two people from Chainstack there, and the only reason I remember them is because they had. I mean, I think not only did they win a prize, but they also had the like construction hats, the Chainstack logo on it.
Oh wow! So yeah, in fact, they won a prize for we had this idea when we were like sitting around in the room on the DevCon, and we created this idea, which is also like complementary to what we are building, which is basically like automated security scanning of smart contracts and like automated security pipelines, because security is clearly a big topic for everybody in the space. Because like smart contracts themselves, they have very high exposure to attackers because they can be easily like read from the blockchain because it's publicly available data. So yeah, it was a very fun experience. We had a small team of chain stackers. Hats a very funny story because it's like very cool guerrilla marketing. And the history of it is that we are having like weekly team calls because we're still relatively small, so we can afford that. And one weekly call, I was basically just like having some fun and just like put my daughter's like plastic hat from the preschool, and it was like a yellow hat, kind of, and everybody, oh, that's a builder hat. So we need to have like builder hats for Chainstack, and they should be blue. And basically, since then, any conference we go, we buy like $3 hats and like put some stickers on top of them, and like everybody loves that, and everybody's like asking, okay, wait, where can we get one? It's like, so next step for us is basically like print some Chainstack merch, like a builder hat in blue with a bunch of stickers. So that's a pretty cool story too.
It's a great guerrilla marketing technique, by the way. I mean, it's pretty hilarious. I think we do have one person's hand raised. I'm not sure if they're still here, uh, but they had it raised for a while. Let me see here. O-step.eth, or zero-step.eth, actually. Yeah, not sure if you're still here, but let's see. Zero-step, you have the floor. I think they definitely just went AFK. All right, zero-step. Let me see here. You can raise your hand again, by the way, if you have any more questions. But I think just in case, if people do have questions, they can always just probably visit your Discord or something similar. But if I may ask you guys, if someone does actually want to join the Chainstack community or, I don't know, somehow contribute in any way, what's the best way for them to go ahead and do that?
Follow our Chainstack account. We have it co-hosted right here, Chainstack HQ. We have our Discord. All of our links are within the within. You can find them on their account. We have a Discord where you can join. and just follow us all here on Twitter. We have a lot of the Chainstack team members up here. We have Eugene. Then if you just look in the audience, you can see a lot of the Chainstack members in here as well. You can just follow us all, engage with us. It's really the best way to stay up to date with the community.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think with that being said, we can probably close out. Uh, Usman, Eugene, I really appreciate you guys for coming on. And yeah, I mean, looking forward to more Arbitrum native protocols using Chainstack and helping secure this Web3 future.
Absolutely. Hunter was amazing. Thanks for great questions, and looking forward to chat soon.
GM, have a good one. Good night, by the way. You guys are in Singapore. Appreciate you guys for coming.
GM.
GN.
GM, GN.
Peace out, guys.